So what we're going to do right now is just open a file, read it, and show it in the screen. You can see the exercise file in the comments below. So we'll create a variable called data, and then using the built-in Python function, which is the open function, and then write the file, CSV file, which is called audible, and there's called bestsellers.csv. This open function returns an iterable, which means we can use it in a for loop. For line in data, print line. And now as you can see, here's the data. And if you can see, it's separated by, each line separated by a new line, \n. So let's remove that new line. To remove it, there's two ways. First one is to do colon and then -1. Let's run our code. We removed the new line. We can also do comma. There is a parameter called end and pass an empty code. As you can see, we get the same result. So if we want to get information for this data that we can see right now, it's difficult because it's all strings and we can't split them into rows and columns. That's why we need to use the CSV library that will interpret the data into or interpret the strings into useful information, so we can take bits of data or any row, any column we want. Let's import the CSV library. And now let's create a variable called, for example, read CSV equal to CSV module. And there is a function called reader. And we need to pass an iterable, which is the data. This reader function returns an iterable, so we can use it in the for loop. And now instead of writing line, let's write row. Let's print it now. And now, as you can see, each row is inside the list. So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, which means we can access any column we want. So let's say we want to print any book of Kiyosaki. So if Kiyosaki in row, so authors are on second column, which is 1. Let's indent this and let's print it. And as you can see, we got 2 items. We can also format this data nicely. So let's write an F string, book name. So the book is at column, first column, which is at index 0, and reader is at row 2. Let's run it. And now, as we can see, we formatted the data nicely. This is a basic code for reading a file. To close your file, file.close. You always forget, and when you are writing and you don't close your file, you may get your file corrupted. So to stay away from this problem, we're going to use a Python keyword which is called with open as file, and then we're going to indent everything. And we don't need this close function now, so the with keyword is going to close the file automatically for us without our intervention. And as you can see, we run our code, it's still working perfectly, and now we don't care about closing our file. Okay, let's do it now with the CSV file. Let's import CSV, and let's call it file CSV. Is equal to CSV.reader, the function, and we pass the file. Instead looping from file, loop through file.csv. As you can see, we get the same result, but each row is inside a list. You can also do this. File CSV. Let me print the data. As you can see, now we have a two-dimensional list. Each item contains a list, or each item is a row. Okay, what we can do, so for example here we can do list comprehension. For example, I want row 0, which is the books, for row in file.csv. So we're going to get all books. If we print, as you can see, those are books. We can also do a check. Let's write the code again. Let's, for example, let's copy this will and do a check. So I want to print the reader of that book, the reader. If will is equal to row, so row 0, and what we're going to get is we want to print as we said, the reader. So the reader is at index 2. Let's print, as you can see, it's Will Smith. The reader is Will Smith. Or we can print all the row. As you can see, the book, the writer, the reader, and the length of the audiobook. We can also do, for example, I want a book plus comma plus row 2, the reader. As you can see, we get inside the same list, the same item. Or what we can do is get them inside the list, both of them. And now I think it's much better because we can access anything we want. Index 0 is the book, index 1 is the reader. We can also convert this into a dictionary. So instead of surrounding it with square brackets, it's surrounded with curly braces. Let's remove the check, the condition. Okay, so what we want to do is I want to set the key as the author. The key is the author. So the author is at index 1, and put colon here, and the value is the book, row 0. Let's run. And now, as you can see, first item, author, book, and so on. With a very limited code, we did a lot of processing. Okay, so CSV stands for comma separated values. So in the reader function here, there is a delimiter. And by default, it's set to a comma. It's default. But in case your data of your file isn't separated by commas, it's separated by dashes or pipes or anything, so you can use the delimiter here. And if your file is separated by tabs, there is another parameter called csv.excelTab. That's it. Just add this if your file is separated by tabs. So what we're going to do right now is create a file and write on it using the CSV library. But first, let's do it without CSV library. We have here a two-dimensional list. Let's create a file called file and use the open function to create a file. Let's call our CSV file 5 best sellers.csv. We need a second parameter, which is the mode, because we're writing, so we need to write W, and create a for loop for row and to loop through the data list. And now we're going to write. So we use the file dot, there is a method called write, and its parameter is row, but first we need to convert it into string. And at the end, to correctly close our file, we need to close it. So closing the file is very important. Let's run our code. We should see a new file created. As you can see now, here's the data, but as you can see, all the items are in one line. So let's split them into several rows. So each item takes a row. Here, just add plus and then quotes \n. Run our code again. And now, as you can see, each item takes a row. But if you can see here, there is square brackets, open square brackets and closing, and also there are quotes. It's not a proper CSV file yet, so because CSV files doesn't have square brackets or quotes. That's why we're going to use the features of the CSV library to get the output nicely formatted. Let's import our CSV file, import CSV, and here let's call it CSV file is equal to CSV. The function we're going to use is called writer. The parameter is our file that we created. And now instead of writing on the file, we're going to write on the CSV file. And the CSV module has a function called a write row. And let's remove all of this and keep only row. And now if we run our code, you can see we get our data correctly. There's no square brackets, no quotes. We only have the new line here. So we're going to fix it now. To fix it is we need to use a third parameter here, which is called new line, and add an empty quotes and run our code again. And now if you can see here, let me spread this. As you can see now, the data is nicely formatted. What we are doing here is just reading this CSV file, nothing new. This is the result. Okay, so now we're going to create a new file and write on it. So with the with statement, open the name of our file, let's call it audiobook.csv, and we need to specify the mode, which is we're going to write, so w writing, and we need to specify a third parameter, which is the new line, to get rid of that new line of when you are writing each line at the end of each text. Let's call it new file. And now create a new variable, call it new data is equal to csv.writer, and we specify our file, which is new file. Okay, and now we're going to get advantage of our writing function, new data dot write row, and I'm going to take this data and write it in this file. So let's write the first row. This is the result. As you can see, first row. So it's a comma separated values, as you can see here. So, but we can't change this comma by any other delimiter. We can use delimiter parameter. Let's separate it by an @ as an example. And let's run our code. Bring a file here, and as you can see, it's separated by @ and we can also separate it by a tab by writing csv.excel tab. And now if I run the code, bring the file here, and as you can see, it's separated by a tab, and here there is tab, and then there is another tab there, another tab here. We can also specify the Unix dialect. Write a csv.unix dialect, save and run our code, bring the file. As you can see, so each value is inside quotes, which means string. So this is the format of Unix. What if we want to do a customized format? We want to write only the books and the reader. So what you can do here in the read function here, we're going to do a list comprehension. So I want the book name and the reader for row and file CSV. We can also specify condition here. For example, if Kiyosaki in row, for example, if Kiyosaki is the author, which is row 1. If the Kiyosaki is the author, get the book name and the reader. but we're not to do this. I'm not going to do this. Now we're going to get all the data. And don't forget, we need to surround it with square brackets. And here we're going to use another function, which is write rows. So this write rows function needs an iterator, and inside it should be another iterator, so which means it's a 2D. So here we have a 2D list. It's a list, and inside it other list. If we run our code and bring the file here, and as you can see here, we got the data, and this is the name of the book, and this is the reader. Okay, now let's add the header and call it book. Let's call it book name and reader. So to do that, just write new data and then use the write row, not rows, write row, and inside list, let's write book name, another comma for the second column. Let's write reader. Run the code again, and now we added the header. Okay. What if I want to write here the data, but the data that I'm writing in does have a header? So if I write that way, I will get the header also. So let's comment this and change the file to audio, not audible. Okay, just to show you how the file looks like. So it has a header, as you can see, and the values. Okay, and if we print this and get the file, as you can see, we got the title and narration. We have the book name and the reader. What if I don't want this header? I want to customize mine. So how can I skip the first row? So to do that, we're going to use the render method next. So file underscore csv dot double underscore next and a double underscore, then parenthesis. And now if I run the code again and bring the file here, as you can see, we skipped the header, first row. And now we can write our header. As you can see. Okay, let's do something else. What if I want to append the W write mode? If the file doesn't exist, it will be created. But if the file exists and it does contain data, it will be overwritten. So be careful for this. To show you how to append, let's first add a single value at the single row, which is first value. And as you can see, we get only the first row, which is the atomic habit. And now I want to append and get the rest of the content. To do that, we're going to change A here for appending, and then we're going to comment the header, because the header is already in the file. And also I'm going to take advantage of the with the rows, and I want to already added the first row, so I'm going to add from 1 till the end. If I run our code, as you can see, we appended to the file successfully. We wrote this with the write mode and the rest with the appending mode. Okay, what if instead of writing to the file, what if I want to preview the customization? I want to preview it before saving it to the files. How can I do that? So we need to import the IO module. And here, so I'm gonna copy here and write IO dot string IO, and don't forget the parenthesis. And to show it to the screen, just write print the new file, this one, dot get value. And now if I print it to the screen, as you can see, here's the data, all the data. So we are just previewing here. Once we are ready, okay, we are ready to save it to the file, then I can change this and use the open function and write it. Oh yeah, we need to remove this line. io.string io is very useful if you want to preview the customization that you did before writing to the file. So what we're going to do now is reading our file using the dictReader function. So what's the difference between the reader function and this dictReader? So we use it to turn the data into a dictionary. And that's it. Let's get started. Let's create a file here called CSV file and use the CSV library .the dictReader, and now we need the file name. Okay, file name, and now we're going to use a for loop for row, and so we get an iterator which is CSV file, and if we print, we're gonna use pretty print. If you don't have this library, you can pip install it. And now as you can see, we turned our data into a dictionary. So this is the first item. There is a problem because we don't have a header, so the key is atomic habit and the value is the missing. No, that's wrong. So the problem here is because we don't have the header. So let's change the file to CSV that does have a header. So audible. And now as you can see, we turn the data into a dictionary. So it took the header and turned it into keys. As you can see here, the author key and James key is the value title. So as you can, and also if you know that the dictionary doesn't care about the sorting, so that's why we are getting title at the end. Okay, that's the output. What if we want to write our custom header? What should we do? To write our custom header, we just need to write here a parameter called field names, and then inside square brackets or list, inside the list, we're gonna specify the columns. I'm just writing ABC for quick. And now we still have an issue, we're gonna fix it, but you will see. As you can see here, it turned it into a dictionary, so everything is okay. Here, everything is okay. So the problem is with the first row. So it took the header and turned it into values. So we want to skip the first row. To do that, we're going to use the next dunder method. Here, CSV file dot dunder method, which is the next one. And now, if we run our code again, CSV dot not enough argument, not new, next. And now as you can see, we skipped the first row and went straight to the second row. That's how we skip the rows. We already saw that before. Okay, let's go back to that file. This file doesn't contain a header, so we don't need this line. You don't need to skip any row. And now if we run this code, you can see that the header is the key and the data is the value. So everything is formatted perfectly for us. Okay, now what if we have extra columns? So what the dictReader is going to do? So let's drag the file here and add here two values like $26, another comma, let's write available, and let's see what the dictReader is going to do. Run our code. As you can see, it couldn't find the extra column because it's expected to have only 4 columns in the header. There's only 4, but it turns out that in the data has an extra column. So it didn't find that column, so it named it as none and put it inside the list. So now everything is okay. But we can change this none into a meaningful value, meaningful key. Instead of writing none, we can say extra. You know, here we don't need to specify field names, just that way it's going to work. We even can do a reference by a variable, a header, and here. So it's still gonna work. So now that value or that parameter is called rest key. And inside string, you're going to write extra. So you can write anything, you can enter your column or key, anything you want. If you run our code again, you can see that now that extra values are inside that key. Okay, now let's do the opposite. What if you don't have enough values? We have a lack of value. Let's, for example, remove this value and see what it's going to put in the D column here. Now drag the file here, remove the extra, and also remove the last value. Okay, so this one we don't need it anymore, even though it's not going to do anything now because we don't have extra value. And now, as you can see, it couldn't find the value in the D column. It passed none as a value, and that's the default. But we can also change it to something meaningful. We can leave it null, but we can change it to, for example, empty. We can write empty instead. To do that, we're going to use another parameter called restval, and inside we can write, for example, empty. If we run our code, you can see here that we got in the D column, we got empty. And that's how we deal with extra values and not completed values or lack of values. What we're going to do right now is writing this data and header to this file using the dictWriter. So why are we going to use the dictWriter instead of the writer function that we saw before? So we use the dictWriter when we have a dictionary and we want to write it into a CSV file. So, but here we don't have a dictionary, so we're going to convert this two-dimensional list into a dictionary and then write it to the file. So let's get started. Create a variable called CSV file, and then the library, then the function dictWriter, and here the file. The field names is the header, so we're gonna just pass the header. And now we're going to write our first row, which is the header. CSV file dot write header. Okay, now we wrote our header. So what we're going to do right now is convert this two-dimension list into a dictionary. So for row in data, so data, this data, and we're going to store each row inside the variable called book and create a dictionary. So for, we need an index and a value. For index value in, we're going to use the enumerate in row. So the key is going to be the header, and inside it the index colon, and then the value is going to be the value. Now if we print, we're not going to write it yet, just see the result. If we don't have an error, it looks everything is okay. Now we can write to the file. We're going to write using the write row function. We already saw it. So CSV file dot write row and add the book. And now if we run our code, we should see an output. Let's bring the file here, and as you can see, so the data has been written perfectly. Okay, let's change it a bit. Let's add this line at the end. CSV file dot write row, and inside it we specify that row. And now if we open, you can see here that that data has been added. Okay, what if we add an extra column here, which is the price column, key and value? What's going to happen? As you can see, an error has been raised and saying that it doesn't know the key price. Yeah, because the header doesn't contain price. It doesn't know what to do, so it throws an error. But we can customize that by using the parameter extra section. And inside the string, it's written raise. So by default, it's raised. That's why we are getting that exception. If we write ignore, we won't have that exception, as you can see here. And if we get the file here, you can see that we don't see that price column. That's because it's ignored. That this ignored means if there is value that is not expected, it's going to be ignored. That's what I mean. So you have the choice either to raise an error or ignore it. What if we have a lack of value? Let's comment this. Let's take this out, comment it, run our code, bring the file here, and as you can see here, you can see 2 commas. This means there is a empty value. So we can specify this to say something meaningful. For example, missing data by using the rest_val parameter. Rest_val is equal to missing value. And now if we run our code again and bring the output, it's written here missing value. Okay, what if we don't have a list, we have a dictionary? In this time, we don't need to convert the list into a dictionary because we already have it. So we just need to write it to the file. What we need to do is .csv file dot write rows and then specify the data. That's it. And if we run our code and let's bring the file, and you can see the data has been written perfectly. So when you have the data as the dictionary, you don't need to convert it. So we just write it to the file straight away. Okay, now we're going to start with pandas. So we're only going to scratch the surface. We're not going deeper. So let's get started. Pandas as PD. So this is just by convention. To shorten it to PD instead of always writing pandas, we are going just to write PD for short. And now we're going to create a series. So a series is a single column value, single column data. So let's call it, for example, data is equal to PD dot series, and inside it we're gonna have a list of, for example, 1, 2, 3. And now if we print it, print data, as you can see, we have one row, 1, 2, 3. This is our data, and it created an index automatically for us. It says it's an integer. We can also customize the index instead of 0, 1, 2. We can do ABC, and we need to add another parameter here, and inside square brackets or inside the list, and see. And if we run our code again, as you can see, the index changed. Okay, now let's get started opening our file. So with open file, the file that I'm going to use now is called cars.csv as file. And now we're going to use the pandas function. So data is equal to pd dot read CSV, and now the file. Okay, and now if we print data, as you can see, we get all these data here. So it's not shown too much, but mostly it's hidden. So there is a function called head. So by default, it gives 5 rows. As you can see here, 5 rows. If you print 3, you get all the rows. As you can see, close, not all, but close. Also, there is a head, there is a tail. It will print the last 3 rows. Okay, so to get acquainted with your data, there is a very good function called info. If we run our code, we can see that our data is a data frame. So it has 48 rows from 0 to 47. It has 5 columns, and this is a table. So the columns are dates, as you can see, those are columns, and non-null values, and the the data type. So object, what does it mean, object? So string is an object, but also a list. When pandas don't understand what's the type of the data, it will put it as object. So object doesn't mean always strings, it could be a list. And here we have 5 objects, the usage that takes in memory. So what we're going to do right now is converting the first column, which is the date, into a datetime object. So just to show you for quick, this date is an object. We want to convert it into a datetime object. To do it, first we need to access the column, which is date, and then we're going to do date.toDatetime pd and data. Now if we run our code, we should name date is not defined date is not defined. Yeah, problem was here. Data, yeah, there's a mismatch. Okay, well, we got no exception, it works. Let's print it. And now, as you can see, we have a datetime converted the date into a datetime object. So datetime 64 and in nanoseconds. Now we're going to drop some columns. We're going to drop the consumption emission, mile age, and the date. We don't need them. So to show you how to do it, we're going to do, let's leave a line here. So data dot drop, not trip, drop. Okay, and inside it we're gonna write there is a parameter called columns, and inside the list we're gonna specify the columns that we want to drop. I said consumption and also date, and the last one was mile age. Okay, let's run the code if we don't get any exception. Okay, no exception. And now if we see the info, no, we didn't drop them yet. Okay, yeah, I need to save it, so I need to store the result. Data is equal to, I need to store it. Okay, and now we only have title and price. Okay, now we can access rows, specific rows. What we can do is can print and do data.log, stands for location, and then if I write 10, which means I'm going to access the row number 10 or at index number 10. If I run the code, as you can see here, this is the row number 10, and we can also access specific cell. We're going to access row 10 of the title. So here, the title, and we need another list here for the row. And now if we print it, we get the specific cell. Okay, now what we're going to do is converting the prices into a numeric value, into an int. So this is an object. That's why we need to convert it into numeric. To do that, first we need to open the price. Okay, we want to store the result in the same column and then to do the changes here. So data, I forgot, I did a mistake. Not data price. Okay, and we're going to replace in the, if you see the data, wait, I'm going to show you something. Info, no, I'm going to do head. I want to show you something before converting. You can see that there is a $sign and comma. We're going to remove the $sign and comma because those characters are making it an object. If you remove them, it's easy to convert them into an int. So now we're going to do data price dot replace. We're going to write a regular expression here. So I want to replace the $sign. Yeah, we need to write the row here. $sign. I want to also, if you find the comma, I want to replace it with what? With an empty string. And regex, okay, is equal to true. And also we need, there is another method as type, and inside I write int. Okay, now let's run the code if there's no, okay, there's no exception. Let's open it and let's see the info to see the type. Okay, we successfully converted the price into an int, as you can see. Amazing. Now we're going to use the matplotlib library to create a chart, a bar chart exactly. So if you don't have it yet, you need to install it with the pip install. Import matplotlib.pyplot. as plt, and here at the end, what we are going to do, data.plot, and here we write the kind is equal to, we want bar, okay, bar, and the x-axis is gonna be the names of the cars, which is at index 0, and the y-axis is going to be the prices, which is our index 1. And then we can also add the title. Title is equal, for example, cars prices. And if we do plt.show, if we run our code, okay. Now, as you can see, we got the bar chart. You know, let's decrease the font. I think it's big. Yeah. Let's decrease it. So what we need to do is do plt.x, the x axis, text, and write font. Yeah, it's much smaller. Okay, maybe it's much better with this font. I think this font size is much better. Okay, and that's how we draw a simple bar chart. And now at the end we are finishing. We need to know how to export. Yeah, I want to export this file into a CSV. So to do that, it's very simple. So we just need to use the data.toCSV. And now if I run the name, or for example, I want to do car prices, for example, .csv. If I save it and run it, I get the bar, of course, first the chart, but you can see a new file was created, and here's the file, and you can see that we got a new column, which is the index column. I don't want this column, so to get rid of it, we just need to specify here index is equal to false. And if we run our code again, now as you can see, we dropped that index, we don't have it anymore.